What happened when 35 million seeds were scattered across a barren landscape in Australia? And what incredible lesson did this ambitious experiment teach the world? Let's find out. There was a time when farmers in Western Australia would walk into their fields each morning and feel as though someone had spread a giant white blanket across the land overnight. As far as the eye could see, the ground shimmered under the sunlight. At first glance, the sight looked beautiful. Short pause. But the reality was far more disturbing. It wasn't snow. It wasn't sand. And it wasn't the reflection of some mineral-rich rock. It was salt, a silent enemy that was slowly turning fertile land into a wasteland. Scientists, farmers, and government officials were deeply concerned. Millions of acres of productive farmland were disappearing before their eyes. Crops were failing, pastures were dying, and regions that once helped feed the nation were gradually transforming into barren fields. The most alarming part? This disaster hadn't appeared overnight. It had been developing quietly for decades. People barely noticed the gradual changes in their daily lives. But satellites orbiting high above Earth revealed a terrifying picture. Every year, the white patches grew larger. Areas that were once green and thriving were steadily turning white. Pause. When scientists began investigating, they discovered that the real problem wasn't on the surface. It was hidden deep underground. Thousands of years ago, nature had created a delicate balance beneath Western Australia. Large amounts of salt were naturally trapped deep within the soil. Under normal conditions, this salt remained buried and harmless. The region's vast native forests played a crucial role in keeping it that way. Huge trees pulled water from deep underground through their roots. That water was then released into the atmosphere through their leaves. As a result, groundwater levels remained stable, and the salt stayed locked away beneath the surface. Then humans made a decision driven by progress. More farmland was needed. More crops had to be grown. Agricultural production had to increase. And so, vast areas of native forest were cleared. Not thousands, but millions of acres. Fields of wheat and other crops replaced the ancient forests. At first, the results seemed remarkable. Agricultural production increased. Farmers earned more money. Governments celebrated. People believed they had successfully mastered nature. Pause. But nature always keeps its own records. As the forests disappeared, a hidden transformation began underground. The trees that once acted as natural pumps were gone. Rainwater started accumulating beneath the soil. This water dissolved the ancient salt deposits and slowly carried them upward. Year after year, groundwater levels rose. A few centimeters, then more. In some places, nearly a meter. Farmers still saw no obvious signs of danger. Above the surface, everything seemed normal. But beneath their feet, a disaster was already underway. As salty groundwater approached the surface, the Australian sun took over. The water evaporated. The salt remained. Again and again, year after year, until a layer of salt began forming on the soil. At first, it was thin, almost invisible, but eventually it became thick enough to kill crops. Roots could no longer survive. The soil hardened. Water infiltration decreased. Seeds stopped germinating. Wheat yields collapsed. Entire fields became useless. Serious tone. When scientists assessed the affected regions, they realized the problem was far bigger than anyone had imagined. This wasn't just a handful of damaged farms. It was a regional environmental crisis. Millions of acres were at risk. And if nothing changed, future generations could lose some of Australia's most productive land forever. The damage extended far beyond agriculture. Roads deteriorated. Building foundations weakened. Trees died. Wetlands changed. Wildlife habitats disappeared. Several native species faced the threat of extinction. Entire communities saw their livelihoods placed in jeopardy. Australia was running out of time. Pause. Experts were assembled. Research programs expanded. Meetings were held. Billions of dollars were discussed. And everyone focused on a single question. How could the land be brought back to life? After years of research, scientists reached a conclusion. The destruction had begun when forests were removed. Perhaps the solution was to bring trees back. The idea was simple. Plant enough trees, and they would once again draw water from underground. Groundwater levels would fall. The salt would remain trapped below the surface. The plan sounded logical. Government agencies supported it. Investors were enthusiastic. The next challenge was choosing the right tree. Eventually, experts selected the Tasmanian blue gum, a fast-growing eucalyptus species known for its high water consumption. Scientists believed it could act as a powerful natural pump. Large-scale planting began. Thousands of acres were covered with young trees. The media celebrated the project as a revolutionary breakthrough. People believed Australia's environmental nightmare was finally coming to an end. And initially, the results looked promising. The trees grew rapidly. Investors poured in more money. Major companies joined the effort. Billions of dollars were committed. Everything suggested success. Pause. But nature had another lesson to teach. A few years later, researchers noticed something unusual. The very trees that were supposed to save the land were beginning to struggle. Growth slowed. Leaves started falling. Some trees died completely. Further investigation revealed the problem. Tasmanian blue gums were naturally adapted to wetter climates. Western Australia was much hotter and drier. The trees were consuming more moisture than the environment could provide. Then scientists uncovered another obstacle. Deep beneath the soil lay a hard geological layer known as ironstone. As roots grew downward, they hit this barrier. Unable to penetrate it, they could not reach deeper water reserves. The trees became dependent on limited surface moisture. Gradually, they weakened, and then they began to die, millions of them. The project that had once symbolized hope was turning into failure. Investors suffered massive losses. Companies collapsed under enormous debts. One major corporation reportedly faced debts approaching $900 million. More than 200,000 hectares became filled with dead trees. A haunting reminder that planting trees alone is not enough. The right species must be planted in the right place. Pause. After this setback, a new initiative emerged. The Yarra Yarra Biodiversity Corridor Project. This time, the goal was different. Instead of planting a single species, scientists aimed to restore an entire ecosystem. Researchers studied historical records. They analyzed soil conditions. They examined rainfall patterns. And they investigated the native vegetation that had thrived there for thousands of years. Eventually, they selected around 60 different native species of trees, shrubs, and plants. Each played a unique role. Some stabilized the soil. Some retained moisture. Some tolerated salt. Others improved soil fertility. Together, they formed a complete ecological system. And this time, the project involved an astonishing number of seeds. 35 million of them. Pause for impact. But another challenge remained. How could seeds survive on land already damaged by salt? Traditional planting methods achieved poor results. The soil had become hard. Rainwater drained away too quickly. Even when seeds germinated, many soon died. To solve this problem, engineers developed specialized planting machines. These machines created small V-shaped channels in the soil. It seemed like a minor adjustment, but the results were extraordinary. When rain fell, water collected inside these channels instead of running away. Moisture reached the seeds directly. Survival rates increased dramatically. The first large-scale planting began. Thousands of hectares were seeded. Many people expected failure. Instead, a remarkable transformation began. Just months later, tiny green shoots started emerging from the white, salty ground. To outsiders, it looked insignificant. But for those who had watched the land die for decades, it was a sign of hope. Inspirational tone. As the years passed, the plants grew larger, and nature began healing itself. Within roughly 2 years, the landscape started changing dramatically. The endless white patches of salt gave way to shrubs and young trees. Scientists monitored the results carefully. The measurements were astonishing. In some areas, groundwater levels dropped by nearly 1 meter. In others, by as much as 2 meters. It may sound small, but it represented a critical threshold. Once salty groundwater falls more than 2 meters below the surface, the soil can no longer pull it upward effectively. For the first time in decades, the cycle of salinity began to break. Rain, once part of the problem, became part of the solution. Tree roots stabilized groundwater levels. Rainwater soaked into the soil and gradually carried surface salt back underground. Nature was cleaning the land itself. Year after year, the transformation continued. Barren white fields turned green. Native vegetation returned. Temperatures decreased slightly. Shade increased. Moisture remained in the soil longer. Evaporation slowed, and the once dying landscape began coming back to life. Today, the journey continues, and the recovering lands of Western Australia offer a powerful message to the world. If humanity is willing to learn from its mistakes, if we choose to work with nature instead of against it, even problems that seem impossible can be solved. This is not simply a story about planting trees. It is a story about restoring balance. A story about the relationship between people and the natural world. And above all, it is a reminder that a single seed planted in the right place can help change the destiny of an entire landscape. And that is the lesson the recovering plains of Western Australia continue to teach the world today.